You are listening to 15 Minutes, the show with Osiris Munir, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, all my kindreds and all my folks out there. What's happening? Before we get into the show today, I kind of moved the announcement back, so I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Kevin Pike, Coldwell Banker. He's a senior real estate and probate specialist. His number is 818. Look at that cute face, 571-1508. Again, Kevin Pike, senior real estate and probate specialist of a Coldwell Banker, 818-571-1508. That is our sponsor. Hey, Kevin. So anyway, we are back today. Before I get into our guest, we're going to have a really interesting conversation. One of my favorites about metaphysical connections, being connected to those people that are on the other side. You know, and on the other side can mean, what about people that live totally in another country and you don't see them often or talk to them often? I don't know what it's like for them, but I know personally, all of us have been connected to our relatives, grandparents, parents, etc., that we still feel a connection towards, even though they've been long gone and deceased. Well, our guest today is an award-winning journalist, author. His name is Nelson Aspen. What a name that is. Hey, Nelson. Nelson's going to run everything down for you, but I wanted to let you know a little bit about the background. He is commemorating the 113th anniversary of the Titanic. He will be appearing here in LA, not appearing, but he will be here in LA location, RMS, April 12th through the 14th, I believe, on the Long Beach Queen Mary. If you want to come out and hang out, he'll be there talking about his book, Kindred Spirits, A Titanic Tale. He will also be there with other iconic historians and people like that have to do with Titanic. Now, before Nelson gets into it, I want to give you a little bit of spin. The Titanic that we all saw on the television was a love story between a man and a woman, two people, kindred spirits on the same boat. One was in the high echelon, didn't have a dime. The other one was very wealthy and probably was bored stiff and needed a little bit of a different kind of energy. Well, Nelson's story is that during the Edwardian period, I looked this up, during the Edwardian era, which is 1912, when the Titanic sank, there was a lot of hedonistic stuff going on the ship that nobody talked about. There were also a lot of gay men that were not allowed to express themselves, I was told, during this era, which I think is we should be ashamed of ourselves. Talking about people we don't even know. Mind your own business. But anyway, that I found out that there was this whole other love story. So Nelson's connection is to a victim of the Titanic. So I want him to introduce Nelson. Welcome to our show. Hey.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here. And I'm flying your way to the West Coast tomorrow for that Titanic weekend. So
yes.
After having lived in Los Angeles for over 2 decades, it's always good to come home to LA.
Do you still feel like LA is your home and not New York?
Well, after 20 years there, I mean, I feel ties to both places. There's obviously so vastly different, but it's great when I get to LA, I know my way around. I'm comfortable there. I have dear friends after many years there. The hiking, the weather, and I think it's my own personal reflection that I think Uber has saved Los Angeles, because I hated driving when I lived there. Of course, it's a necessary component of life there in that city. But now to be able to get an Uber and not have to worry about a rent-a-car, it has saved LA for me. And so I come more often than I would otherwise.
No, that's good. And not only that, it's simply gorgeous, honey. You are picking up. It's the kind of weekend that you can fall in love or something. It's like a beautiful, gorgeous, very spring, but summer. It's so beautiful. But anyway, to your story. So what is it about the Titanic? How did you find out that the victim Milton Long, I believe his name is, that you were connected. And how did all of this come about for you to be able to write your book, talk about the story?
Yeah, well, I'm 61, so it's been a 61-year journey. It has been a lifelong series of dreams and coincidences and just serendipity and happenstance. But after a while, when these things start to come at you, they become less of a coincidence and more like clues. And, I'm not one prone to believing in woo-woo, metaphysical, paranormal kind of things as a rule. But like I said, when you get confronted with sort of obvious indications, you begin to open yourself up to more things. And that was certainly the case with me. You also find people say, "Oh yeah, in a past life I was Henry VIII," or "Oh yeah, I was." If you want to be from the Titanic, I was Molly Brown. No,
Yeah.
I was a rather obscure, a footnote, a really relatively unknown character from the Titanic world, this first-class passenger named Milton Long. But over the course of years, I discovered all of these similarities and connections to him. And of course, this was all in the days before the internet, before we all held Google in our hands.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go to places called bookstores and libraries and put it together forensically. And so with the book, Kindred Spirits, I wanted to, because I'm very involved with the Titanic community. I have a Titanic podcast. I write articles, I commentate, I do speaking engagements, all things about Titanic. But with my connection to Milton, I wanted to honor him and create a novel that would propel him as part of the Titanic legacy. So no longer a footnote. He has his own place in Titanic history now. He died at 29, so his life was cut short. I feel I somehow had to pick up the baton. He couldn't live the life I think he was meant to live. And he would have been very repressed in his Edwardian world, and my research found that he was. And I'm certainly the opposite of that. So in my book, it's a historical fantasy. I've taken what's available to him and I've creatively filled in the rest with everything that led up to his last night in life as he knew it in 1912. But in my book, he finds himself, as soon as he goes under the water on that cold April night, he wakes up in modern Manhattan inside. So it's a buddy movie. It's an odd couple story. And they must work together, these two souls in one body, to solve the mystery of his unrequited love from the Titanic. So it ticks a lot of boxes.
Wow, that in what's interesting is that during a time where all of these kinds of subjects about gay men, gayness in general, the LGBTQIA plus community, I don't know what people out there think. LGBTQIA plus is in every family in America. Whether people talk about it, acknowledge it, or whatever, it's all over the place. It's a part of life. I don't know what the big deal is, but I do know that no one would ever have thought that these people were being repressed during a time that some other American historical event about the Titanic was taking place. Everybody's thinking about the Titanic, the ship, but no one was thinking about the people on the ship who might have been lost, what the value of their lives. So what made you do research on Milton in particular? There had to be other people on the ship.
Oh,
so
sure.
What made you do research on him?
Well, I had this connection. I had a series of dreams that really didn't have anything to do with ships. It was sliding down a banister, but instead of getting down at the end of the banister and getting off, I kept going into the blackness. Meanwhile, it was a recurring dream almost every night of my life, my entire life. Also, I have a very intense fascination with maritime disasters. It's not uncommon, believe it or not. It started for me with the Poseidon Adventure in 1972. If you remember that film, the classic disaster film, the Poseidon Adventure. But I was obsessed with ships, especially ships that had tragic endings, the Lusitania, the Titanic, the Andrea Doria, etc. So all of this was going on. Meanwhile, people would mistakenly address me all the time as Milton. Now, my name is Nelson. There might be a little, if you were hard of hearing, I could understand it. But if you can hear perfectly, and I enunciate, I pride myself on my diction. So to be constantly referred to as Milton, it's an old-fashioned name, was curious. So I started putting these things together, and in a very obscure book in the early 80s, which I found in a bookstore in the South Street Seaport, it mentioned a particular, there's a famous passenger from Titanic who survived named Jack Thayer. And it was detailing Jack Thayer's jump from the ship, but with his friend. And I'd heard the story about the friend he was with did not make it. Well, in this new book that I had found, new in the 80s, it detailed the other person's demise. His name was Milton, and he slid down the railing of the ship. Of course, the ship was tilted at an angle, and since he wasn't a strong swimmer, he decided to slide down the railing to the water and then make a swim for it. But as Jack testified, he saw Milton be pulled under the black waters. So he the suction and the force of the
water
sea took him. So that was heartbreaking, but it was also a light bulb moment for me. And I found a surviving letter that Jack wrote to Milton's family. And it reads, honest to God, it reads like a love letter. And this is between two men who had really just met on the ship, wealthy, privileged men of their era, but still, you could really just be pals. And it reads like a love letter when he tells Milton's parents about how brave he was, how close they felt. And he sent Milton's parents a photograph of himself and requested a photo of Milton back. Now, I don't think you need to be a genius to read between the lines of what that letter was really saying and what it meant to Jack himself. And I should point out that when we think of the Edwardian era, the first thing that comes to mind is not sex. But I assure you, people were having sex on the Titanic. People of all classes, first class, second class, and down in steerage.
Like rabbits.
People are people. People were having sex. So I didn't think, and yes, boys and girls, there were also gay people on the Titanic, just as there were gay people everywhere. So this was not a facet of Titanic history that has been explored or exploited. And by exploiting, I'm saying for entertainment purposes. What was the story that James Cameron told in his 1997 movie was with two fictional characters. Jack and Rose didn't exist. They were just characters like Romeo and Juliet created for DiCaprio and Winslet. In my story, and I'm not saying one is better at all, I'm just saying it's different. It's a story of two people who actually existed, but I'm fictionalizing it to imagine filling in the blanks of what could have been. And I try to give Milton his due. Nobody's heard of Milton really until now, and we're saying his name. Here we are, 113 years ago, next week. Here we are, all these years later, saying his name, and I think that's something to be proud of.
And that's a really good, and I understand the metaphysical tie, because, again, everything is energy, whether people want to believe this or not. So you can keep your woo-woo, wee-wee about all these different things. But the truth of the matter is that when we are children, we go to school and learn. They teach science, geography, and the various classes. And in those classes, they talk about energy that can never be created or destroyed. So when a person drops the body, is how I want to say it, it doesn't mean that their energy is still not around. I mean, the energy is what's driving the body, not the other way around. The body is basically, it may sound kind of crude, it's a dead piece of flesh. And what brings life to it is the energy or the entity inside of the body that carries a name. And then mankind puts a sex on it. Then they put a label on it, depending on what you were born with. And as I was explaining to someone the other day, just because people are born with certain kinds of parts, male and female exist with every human being, those two functions that they work together. And it is nobody's business how people choose to express their own, not yours or mine, theirs. their own masculinity and sexuality without being bastardized from it. That's one reason I was so excited that Harlan would let me interview you, because I really wanted to get into some of these topics. So with the love affair that Milton and what's his name, Tom, right? That they were having, right?
This is Jack Thayer. This is Milton Long and Jack Thayer from the Titanic. Yeah. But then we moved to 2025, and we have new characters.
And they were on there, right? Milton was actually a person on Titanic. So was Jack. Is that correct?
Correct.
So they were on there. So it is their love story, I'm sure, that the studios discovered, and I'm calling the studios out because I know how it works. I'm in entertainment. The studios discovered it was about an uncomfortable subject that they might not have wanted to talk about. And so they made it comfortable and put a man and a woman in there, when the love story that you're speaking of is between two men. And only obvious that it would be, I mean, of course, heterosexual going to have, but I want to hear the different stories, how they survived in a situation where they were shining. What did they do? Did they have to sneak around? Did they go into the belly of the ship, to express themselves with each other? What were some of the challenges that and especially on a ship that's contained, you can't get out unless you go out in the water. How did they manage to keep their wits and to keep their communication going?
Well, there were over 2,000 souls on board that ship. So there are 2,000 stories to be told. I just happen to have a lock-in with Milton. So this is the story. And from my research, Jack and Milton were never able to consummate or recognize their love affair. They met too late before the iceberg. They only met hours before, although I think Milton had his eye on Jack the whole time. Jack was very outgoing, Milton was very reserved, and they got very close very quickly. Maybe something happened, but just following the timeline of the last hours of Titanic, I don't think that happened. But most importantly, they got off the ship together. Jack survived, Milton did not. And Jack went on to marry and have 4 children. But
really,
the thing and Milton would have wanted that. Milton was lost at sea, literally and figuratively. And in my story, he would want Jack to go on and live out a full life. And that's what Edwardian men did. They got married and they had children. And interestingly, as is in the case with almost anyone who survives a tragedy like the Titanic, like 9/11, like a tsunami, like any other horrible tragedy, to survive something that traumatic does not give you a happy ending. It's not like you walk away, oh, I got off the Titanic, I'm going to Disneyland. No, you have post-traumatic stress. You have survivor's guilt. This is why you don't hear veterans talking about their military service.
They don't want to.
They don't want to talk about it. They're traumatized by it. Jack Thayer went on to marry, have 4 children, and at the age of 50, a multi-millionaire, hugely successful man, took his own life at age 50. He never got over the Titanic. One of his children was killed in World War II. His mother, who survived Titanic, passed away on the anniversary of Titanic right before that.
What? Get out.
No, these are the coincidences that are really not coincidences. And of course, I think also he was trying, I mean, I get into it in the book. It started with the loss of Milton when he was a teenager on the Titanic. And by the time he was 50, he just couldn't stand it anymore. And we were not, certainly 50 years after the Titanic, we were not as switched on about mental health and self-care as we are today. We still have a long way to go on that as well. But I wanted to give Milton and Jack the happy ending they didn't get.
That they deserved. Yes. And a lot of times, any kind of relationship that experiences trauma or separation now, is something to be dealt with inwardly and on an external, in an external way. But what I found interesting in what you just said is that there was no safe space for them on the Titanic, especially with them just meeting hours before he could have died. He didn't know, Jack didn't know. He just happened to survive. But what I find interesting is although he got married and had 4 kids, maybe you can answer this. I don't know. But if someone really is in love with another person of their same sex, what did they do? Do it to please other people? Or was he pleasing people to go get married and have kids and then end up taking your own life because you weren't happy? Poor
No,
baby.
that it was a societal norm, and perhaps, I mean, I can even say for myself, there are times where you feel compelled to follow the societal norm because it might be easier in theory.
It's hard.
In theory, of course, socially just more agreeable, or you may just want to follow a traditional path. Who knows? And no one can decide that for another person. One of the important books that I read along my lifelong journey to figure all of this out about Milton, and I mentioned it in the book as well. There was some obscure book that I picked up in a used bookshop on Broadway, like for $5 out of the bin, and it always stuck with me. And so I write about it in the book. It was called "You Were Born Again to Be Together." And it explores the notion that all the people in your life, whether it's a lover, a parent, an enemy, your killer, your best friend, whatever this person is, it's not the first time you've had this relationship. That your lives, one lifetime, you take those people with you into the next lifetime and the next and the next and the next, which is an interesting concept, which kind of helps explain why sometimes you meet somebody and you feel like you've known them forever,
like you've known them right,
or have an instant dislike, or I mean it works both ways. So
and people,
who knows?
Yeah. We don't understand that. I know exactly what book you talking about because I have it in my collection. It's by Dick and Trina Sutphin. It's by Dick and Trina Sutphin. It's a pink book, I believe. Yeah. And they were husband and wife exploring soulmates, twin souls, etc. They get into those kind of subjects in their topic. And in the early 70s, when I personally got into metaphysics, which I love, those were some of the people that were my mentors, because no one around none of my friends or family for that matter were interested in anything like that, and shunned anyone that would possibly even think about studying or going in that kind of direction. So I'm comfortable living out of a box. I'm sure you are too. I don't mind being out of a box. And the older I've gotten, I enjoy being more out of a box than I already am.
When we were growing up, that was very hippy dippy, new agey kind of thing. And, you work itself out. As I said, when it's confronting you, you have to accept it. You mentioned earlier about the way we were brought up with math and science and grammar, or whatever the things that we learn. But we also, most of us anyway, learn some kind of faith somewhere along the way, whether that's Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism or Islam, whatever it is, and that's all about spirit. Every faith is about the golden rule, being a person of good spirit. So why not? It fits in very naturally to that. I mean, in any religion, I don't think it's sacrilegious to believe in kindred spirits.
I use the word kindred spirits on my show because I feel it fits more than tribe. And I personally don't like the word tribe because to me, it's a cheap way of getting out of what we've done to the Native Americans. And I personally have never put on a costume, gone to a ceremony to do nothing. And to me, that's what tribes do. But the word kindred spirit, your term, really caught my eye because it is much more of a spirit. It's a spirit. It's an energy that we feel, when I met you, when I saw your face, I don't know you, but I feel like I know. I don't know you deep enough to say, oh yeah, that's my friend. I know him, blah, blah, blah. But the connection that I feel is I feel with everyone that comes on my show, I feel it's not by chance that we get to meet each other. And most of them, I feel some sort of connection. Like, oh, wow, I met you in this lifetime. And whether that's going to be a long connection, a deep connection, or whatever, still our energies met and connected.
It's a good way to think about it. If you after living in Los Angeles for so long, you get very isolated in your automobile. Here in New York, you're on the subway with people, you're on a street corner with people, you're waiting for your table at a restaurant with people, you're riding up in the elevator, there's the doorman at your lobby, or your neighbor that's 5 feet away from you, and you are forced to interact. And these spirits are around you all the time. That was one of my favorite things in the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze. When you remember all the other spirits were around too. You're constantly surrounded, especially in New York, So it's a marvelous thing.
And if you can think of different things, in my opinion, the thought towards someone or something gives it life, because you're sending that energy out there, and here comes the effect, back to greet you. Now into the commemoration of the 113th anniversary. And you're going to be talking about your book, and they're going to be discussing the Titanic. You're also going to be doing tours, New York, I believe London, I believe Washington. You got some hot stuff going on, bud.
This is the year, I think we're in the Chinese year of the snake. It's really, for me, it's the year of Titanic. It is taking over my life this year. So this weekend, Long Beach on the Queen Mary for the Titanic Weekend Convention. Then immediately off I go to Los Angeles next week. And the actual 113th anniversary of the sinking is Tuesday, April 15th. And I'm going to be in Los Angeles at the Four Seasons Hotel on Doheny Drive, which is ironic because when I lived in LA as a reporter, I was in that hotel at least twice a week doing junket interviews and all those. So in a way, the Four Seasons Hotel is very much like home to me. So I'll be doing a book release party on April 15th, the 113th anniversary at the Four Seasons. Everyone is welcome to come. You might see a few famous faces while you're there. You never know. You always do when you're in the Four Seasons.
You always do when you're in the Four Seasons.
It's going to be a very festive. We'll be drinking Kindred Spirits, and I'll have books available, but we'll also take a moment to pause and honor the lives of all those who were affected by that tragedy. Then I'm on back to New York. All this stuff is on my website, nelsonaspen.com, but I'll have some signings in New York, a signing in Baltimore, a signing at the Titanic exhibition in Boston.
That's right.
Off to London, off to Sydney, and very exciting for me is I will be going to Belfast, Ireland at the end of May, to the very shipyard where Titanic was built. So I'm waiting for all sorts of ghosts to come to me then. Because the last time I was in Belfast 20 years ago, it was a ghost town. There was really nothing there but some cranes. And they have rejuvenated the Titanic quarter, where all the ships were built in the heyday of the great liners. And they've built the world-class, ground zero for Titanic fans, Titanic Museum. It's the ultimate Titanic destination in Belfast, the Titanic Museum. Then adjacent is the Titanic Hotel, which has been made out of the designing offices where Thomas Andrews designed and built the Ship of Dreams. And now it's a hotel, and I'll be doing a signing in the drawing office where Thomas Andrews created the Titanic. And they have a distillers. And again, we'll be drinking some Kindred Spirits at the distillers. So it's really maybe a homecoming for the souls of the Titanic, and certainly for any fans of the story.
Well, you just brought up something interesting, because I am told, and I have experienced myself, whether you believe it or not, I can't deny what I've seen and experienced with my own life. But I do know that when there are celebrations such as this, and they are about the deceased or whatever is going on, those energies, they feel it because it's about them. Why wouldn't they feel it? So they do gather around, and everyone that has been in a situation where there's this kind of thing going on, they have had experiences. I know people said the lights start flickering, they start hearing sounds or something, bell clanging or whatever the situation was. And they documented it and then, brought it out. And it's funny how people can see things, feel things, and still won't believe what they saw, because The society paints a picture that everything on the other side that you can't see might not be real, when in my opinion, it's the other way around. Everything on the other side is real and this stuff is fake, because this can be changed, subject to change any minute, such as our new regime. Things can be changed at any minute. What man sets up can be changed at any minute. But when there is something that has to do with the natural occurrence of things, or the dichotomy of nature and spirit together, it creates a whole nother mystery. And I think we lack the understanding to be able to discuss it thoroughly, because we're afraid of our own self. We're afraid. We're afraid.
I haven't, I'm open to that stuff, right? I'm a pragmatist, but I'm still open to the idea. I was the only 6-year-old on the farm in Pennsylvania that had a crystal ball. I didn't know who was dead when I was 6, but I knew Marilyn Monroe was dead. I knew John F. Kennedy was dead, and I knew my grandfather was dead. So I would sit on the porch with my crystal ball and try and get Marilyn Monroe, JFK, and my grandfather, but without success. But I have been trying to figure out, open to getting some connection other than the dreams and the misnomers of Milton. And I'll tell you the story of how I knew I was on the right track.
How did you know?
1985, I was 22 years old, living in New York City, and Dr. Robert Ballard, the oceanographer, discovered the wreck of Titanic. For all those years, from 1912 to 1985, nobody knew where it was. It was a mystery. The ocean was too deep. They couldn't find it. Dr. Ballard found the Titanic, in large part thanks to Jack Thayer's testimony about the ship breaking. A lot of eyewitnesses said, oh no, the ship never broke. It went down as one. But we found out, of course, that it did break. And Jack was the one that said, no, it broke. And when the ship broke, all the debris from inside, every dish and boiler and piece of furniture and people, spilled onto the ocean floor. And it was the debris field that led Dr. Ballard. He saw the debris, and that led him to the wreck. So he finds the wreck. It's tremendously exciting. He's instantly the most famous man in the world that week. He was on the cover of every magazine, the front page of every newspaper. I'm 22. And all I knew was I needed to be on the exploration to get to that wreck, because he just found it. He hadn't dived to the ship. He hadn't made the dive to the ship. So I knew I needed to contact him. And some snot-nosed 22-year-old kid. Who did I think I was? I picked up the phone book. Today's kids don't know what a phone book is. Some of us remember the phone book. I picked up the phone book. I tracked him down. I got him on the phone at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Massachusetts. The lady on the phone, who's calling, please? I said, this is Nelson Aspen calling for Dr. Ballard. He's not going to take my call. She puts me on hold. A moment later, Dr. Ballard gets on the phone and goes, hello, Milton?
What?
And that's when I knew. That was the moment. I'm like, I know what I'm talking about. This isn't just a figment of my imagination.
Because that's what happens when you're on the right path. You get the signs. You get all these signs. And whether people want to recognize those signs or not, we get signs all the time and we just ignore them. I could give you we'll have to talk one day. I could give you so many stories of things that have happened to me. When I was a little kid, my mother used to tell me I was possessed by the devil because I told her I could see spirit. Oh, it was negative. Again, people that won't come out and say there might be something to what you're sensing, feeling, hearing, seeing, but they would shove it on the rug. Now, I grew up in the South where there's a lot of that. There's a lot of ghost spirits. They do a lot of that kind of thing through Santeria, through voodoo, through Madame Marie, Madame, those people. A lot of those things are in the South, and so a lot of times those kind of stories were carried on, from one generation to another, but no one was willing to talk about it, what is her name? She's a famous psychic, and I do a lot of my painting on her. Madame Marie, from New Orleans. From New Orleans, she was one of the big tarot card readers, and everybody would go to her because she was a salon stylist, and she would listen to everyone's story. You know, go to the salon, you tell all your business. You know, she knew everybody. But as she became more of a big listener, she also began to read tarot cards, tell people's fortunes, things like that. So she became very famous for that. But anyway, and very famous. So if you just look under Creole Queen, her name will come right up. But for some reason, every time I think of her name, St. Clair is getting mixed. Marie St. Clair, for some reason, they're intertwining. But anyway, so we were brought up, especially in the South, brought up with a lot of those kind of ghost stories, spiritual things, church that, you know, when you go to the church and so died, they would visit somebody the next night or 2 days later, and then the person come to church. Well, you know, Sister Louise, she came to me in my dream the other day.
Marie Laveau, is that it?
That's
I
her,
just
Madame
Googled it.
Marie Laveau.
New Orleans voodoo queen, it says.
She was big on pulling spirits from the other side and, you know, talking to, having people talk to their ancient ancestors and things like that. And so I think, and wasn't there a show that it's called The Other Side or whatever, Crossing Over? It was called Crossing Over. That was about talking to people on the other side. But when he called you Milton, you said you knew you were on the right path. And is that the moment that you started the book, or had you already started writing?
Oh no, I was just a 22-year-old kid at the time.
Oh, you just...
and he was, Dr. Ballard was such a gentleman. He listened to my, I didn't get into the past life thing with him. I just expressed my enthusiasm for what he was doing, and I wanted to be a part of it. I'm like, I'll swab the decks, I'll tie the ropes, you know, whatever. Just get me on the ship. And he actually, like 3 days later, and I open up my mailbox, and there's an application to the Oceanographic Institute, which he was kind enough to arrange to have sent to me. But that's when it sort of became real. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. Do I really want to go down the path of becoming an oceanographer when a career in show business would be so much more stable?
Oh, wow.
So, but that just the fact that Dr. Ballard took my call, called me Milton, and extended his professional courtesy to me was great. And flash forward to 1996, a dear friend of mine was auditioning for James Cameron's movie. And the audition criteria was write a monologue from the point of view of a passenger, and you'll perform it for the casting director. And James Cameron would, of course, have final approval over everything, even the tiniest role, extra, you know, featured anything. James Cameron had made all those decisions. So she came to me, and 1996, we didn't have the internet the way we have it today. And she goes, I don't know anything about the Titanic. Can you help? I know you're a nut for the Titanic. Can you help me? I wrote her a monologue. She got a part in the movie. She's become a filmmaker in her own right. We host a Titanic Talk podcast together.
Wow.
So we have stayed through our very different takes on Titanic appeal. It has paid lifelong dividends. And after Titanic's enormous success, Cameron followed that up with a film called Ghosts of the Abyss, which was about the dives and the dives to Titanic. And he released a companion book. And I remember in Los Angeles, I was commissioned to host a book event for James Cameron's new book version of Ghosts of the Abyss. And so I'm back in the little green room area with Jim and Don Lynch, who's the definitive Titanic historian, and Ken Marshall, the definitive painter, of the artist of all things Titanic. And I said, you know, we're just killing time in the back room waiting for the event to start. And I was like, you know, guys, you got to sign my copy of the book. But I got to tell you, I think I've had a past life as Milton Long. All three of them knew who Milton was historically.
Wow.
And I don't remember which one of them signed the book to Milton for, you know, which was good value.
Wow.
So, you know, these things are marvelous. And especially when you're talking to other people who don't just immediately discount you as a nut job, but rather, you know, think it's cool.
Well, you're rather brilliant, actually, because you've taken a concept that is out of a box. You've made a space for the concept to come to life, and then you presented it in a form of a book that is appealing to enough people. And now, unlike when I was younger, people are more open to things like that. They're like, oh wow, he's speaking to Milton Long. He might be Milton Long in another life. Maybe he was Milton Long. So it's a lot more open and accepting in that than it's ever been before right now. So your book is very, very timely, and you are definitely on the right path and on the right platform, as you should be right about now. Because with all the reality we have, nobody really wants to look at reality right now. It's very harsh.
Well, and this is, you don't have to be a Titanic fan to be entertained by this book. And I wanted it to be entertaining. There's sex in it. There's intrigue. There's a mystery. And yeah, and hey, if you want Titanic, that's there too. And it's not a story about, it's not James Cameron's Titanic. It's Nelson Aspen's Titanic. And each generation, you have a horrible event. This is a grotesque, earth-shattering, cataclysmic event like Titanic, and nobody would have ever dreamed this unsinkable ship of dreams. We had finally mastered technology that we could fight Mother Nature. We could just plow right through fields of ice. Nothing can sink this ship. But every generation seems to be reignited to the story of Titanic, whether in the was it the 40s? But Walter Lord wrote his book, A Night to Remember, and people were gripped by that anew. Like the Titanic was just starting to fade out of our memories when that book came out, and then they made the book into a movie in 1958. And people were very intrigued by that. Dr. Ballard found the ship. People were reignited. James Cameron came along, and his film not only lit a flame for a new generation. It continues to. You meet 10-year-old kids now, they know
about the Titanic.
James Cameron's Titanic. So it's forever now in our consciousness.
Well, when you were also in the documentary Ship of Dreams, talk about that. What was the difference between the Ship of Dreams theme, for those who don't know of it? I didn't. I mean, I knew of it, but I didn't know it was that involved. But anyway, the Ship of Dreams, what is the difference between the Ship of Dreams and the Titanic in terms of the storyline, the difference in, do they bring in any of that essence of metaphysics, or is
only the part that I'm in? Because the Titanic documentary, Ship of Dreams, is called Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, made by my filmmaker friend, who I helped audition for James Cameron. And she cleverly took, she assembled some of the other small part players from Cameron's movie, featured roles that everybody who's seen the film a zillion times can immediately recognize, but she reunited them 25 years later to reflect on the experience of being in that groundbreaking movie. And she tells, of course, her story about how she came to land her role and my participation in that. And I tell my Milton story. That led to us doing the podcast, the Titanic Talk podcast together, she and I, and consequently, we're interviewing authors, historians, descendants of passengers, explorers. We've had over 52 episodes of Titanic Talk with a very diverse group of guests. And it made me feel where I need to contribute my bit to the Titanic legacy in some small way. And my connection to the Titanic legacy is Milton. So this is my 9th book, but it's my first one of its kind. I've written very different books. So I talked to my publisher about it, and I said, I'd like to tell my Milton story. And he said, I would love that, Nelson, but you have to, he says, your previous books have been memoirs. I would like you to fictionalize it and make it very contemporary. So I broached historical fantasy, which was not a genre I was familiar or comfortable with. That's when you get the blessing of a good editor. And interestingly, my editor, who was brilliant, was basically the modern day Milton. He's 29, Milton was 29. I was interested in Milton when I was 29. And my editor just turned 30, and he was brilliant. He got it. He helped me with the fantasy aspect, but more importantly, he helped me bridge the generation gap, because I feel like, oh yeah, I know what it's like to be 30 because I've been 30. But being 30 in 2025 is different than when I was 30.
Yeah.
And it was certainly different from 1912. So it was a very harmonious union to create this book.
Wow, we are nearly out of time. I want to say again, thanks to our sponsor, Kevin Pike of Coldwell Banker, 818-571-1508. He's a senior real estate and probate specialist. Our beautiful, wonderful human being, Kevin Pike, cares about people and gets them into properties that they will love now and forever. Again, Nelson, our guest, thanks to Nelson Aspen. His book is out. I believe it was mentioned it's $15 or
I think it's $17 on Amazon. The Kindle $8.99.
It's gotten more popular, but it's really, really popular. So when you go to the Four Seasons to see him or to the Titanic, make sure you bring money, bring your credit card so you can actually get the book on site when you're there. It's going to be very lovely because you'll have all of the energy going and the book, and you'll get to meet Nelson, of course. And Nelson, what are your social media tags?
It's very easy. Nelson Aspen, NELSONASPEN. That's Instagram, Threads, X, and YouTube. IG is it also Nelson Aspen? Nelson Aspen. I love it. I think you're not supposed to love one child more than the other, but Instagram is my preferred child.
I love Instagram.
That I love the best. And I had a brilliant 21-year-old young lady help me set up a TikTok account, and I'm trying. I can't with TikTok, but I'm trying. And that one is Nelson.Aspen because somebody had the nerve to take my name already.
Oh, wow. Did they take your name and use it without your permission, or
no?
I
guess you don't need, I guess at least in TikTok, I guess you don't need permission. Not that they're posting anything interesting, but Nelson.Aspen on TikTok.
Yeah, but
don't worry about TikTok. It's not all that.
I love TikTok though.
Do you?
I was told that anybody that has the old TikTok app on their phone before they said TikTok was over is in for a big treat. People are looking for those phones with those original TikTok logos, just so you know, there's some money in there to be made. So again, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to Osiris, Me, 15 Minutes of Show at LA Talk Radio. Thanks to Sam Hassan, our engineer and the owner of LA Talk Radio. He's a wonderful person, very good to work with, very solid and in the corner of the host. Also, don't forget me, IG, Osiris_Munir, the painter. Don't forget, I am a painter, writer, author myself. And also go on to IG. I just said Osiris Munir, the painter. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I like you. I like you for who you are as people and what you do and what you stand for. And I love you for coming and watching me and entertaining and listening to my Gib Gab every Thursday. And again, thanks to our special guest, Nelson Aspen, award-winning journalist and author, going to be at the Queen Mary. Don't forget, 12th through the 14th of April, RMS Queen Mary in Long Beach. And then on the 15th, he's going to be at the Four Seasons Hotel, I was told. And he said, you're all invited. So don't forget to go by there and bring some cash and a credit card. I mean it. Books are very important. They really do get used to some tough times when you are reading books like Nelson. So anything else you want to say before we go?
I hope to meet you in person because it's been such a pleasure this way that I look forward to the
It's only because you asked me. I'm going to come there now. I'm like, okay, I'll be there.
Excellent. I can't wait to give you a hug. I'm a toucher. I'm a hugger.
I'm a hugger and a toucher. Right. We're the same way. We're kindred spirits. Don't worry. Okay. All right. My other kindred spirits out there. Don't forget next time, like yourselves, love yourselves, and don't forget to smile. It works wonders. Bye. Bye.
You are listening to 15 Minutes, the show with Osiris Munir, only on LA Talk Radio.